Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2025 the Prague International Chess Festival. This tournament has still only one round left, and it is a very crucial round. And probably by the time I'm releasing this video, probably the final round will be over already. But personally, I predict that Aravindh Chithambaram from India will likely, take the title as the champion of the event, since right now he is in the sole lead, and second place we have Pragnananda Ramesh Babu, who is behind him for half a point. The situation is still a little bit tense, but comparing the opponents that Aravindh and Prague are facing in the very last round, I think, in my opinion, Aravindh's opponent is slightly easier to face than Prague's opponent. Just to point out, though, both Indian players in the tournament have remained undefeated so far, which is really impressive and once again just proves that Indian men are leading the world in chess right now. As for women's chess, probably China still holds the top spot globally. But today I want to talk about Aravindh Chithambaram's round 7 game because this is just a golden win, a very decisive win for him, where he beat the super strong grandmaster Anish Giri. It's just such a critical win for him. It's definitely worth analyzing it. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys this game and doing a recap of it. Yesterday's round 8 ended in a draw for him, and if you're interested, you can actually go to chess.com's, event homepage to check it out. For Aravindh Chithambaram, this win wasn't just, a victory. It was a clear sign of his chess maturity. In the game, Aravindh showed strong tactical control, especially against a seasoned opponent like Anish Giri. He didn't show any signs of nerves and steadily took charge of the position. Well, for Anish Giri, despite his experience as a former world championship contender, he just couldn't find his rhythm in the game, I guess. Aravindh expertly maneuvered his pieces and gradually pushed the game in his favor, and then just came up with a brilliant tactic followed by a couple of more brilliant moves and eventually won the game. This match really highlighted some subtle yet brilliant moments, particularly in the middle game where Aravindh just used some interesting tactical ideas like that brilliant knight g5 move to neutralize Anish Giri's attacking plans. This is what makes modern chess so captivating. Players, they not only master the fundamentals, they not only need to master the fundamentals, but they also need to be really creative. They need to make these creative, unexpected moves to create problems and challenges for their opponents especially at crucial moments. Aravindh Chithambaram's performance was solid and mature, and Giri had chances to strike back, but in the end he couldn't find any weaknesses basically, and he is under too much pressure. And today, now let's dive into that game, round 7, and just break down this exciting match, looking at how they set up their positions and responded to each other's moves. Alright, so now let's take a look at round 7 here, where Anish Giri is with the white pieces and Aravindh Chithambaram with the black pieces. This is round 7, a very important game for Aravindh, because Prague is, at this time, the same point that he has, but after he won this game, it's completely different. So let's take a look at how he won this golden and decisive game. Here we have Giri with the white pieces, and he starts with the move d4, and we have d5 on the position, c4, e6, knight c3, the queen's gambit declined, bishop e7, we have c takes d5, and after e takes d5, bishop f4. Well, basically both sides are just developing their pieces, nothing special. Knight f6, e3, and they're all using their time really well, not thinking at all. And here we have bishop f5 developing the bishop. We have knight f3, c6, and knight h4. So actually already both sides have started to use some of their time. So knight h4's idea is to attack this bishop, And actually, there are many options here for the bishop. You can go bishop g6, bishop e4, or bishop g4. Retreating back is like to any of these three squares is basically not a good option. Basically, you have to choose between these three moves. Bishop e4's idea is actually to try to lure white to get into playing f3, because then you go back to bishop g6, and by that time, probably white will do something like takes, and then after h takes g6, white has already played f3, and it might cause some weaknesses. And here, for example, let's say white goes queen b3, maybe in the future b5 can happen, and this pawn structure, especially this e3 pawn, could become a weakness in the future. So bishop e4 is an okay move, but not the best move here, and the best move was being played in the game, and it is bishop g4. And this just shows the depth of the understanding of the position by Aravindh. And here, Anish Giri decides to play queen c2, okay, to run away with the queen, very logical. And here, knight bd7 was played, developing the knight. And then we have h3, attacking the bishop goes back to e6, because here, if you go bishop h5 here, white can even go g4, and then after here, takes, white will have a big white king side, and it's just a really aggressive variation. Then white will go bishop e2, and maybe just actually, I think definitely white will castle queenside on the very next move. It's really aggressive, the position is really complex, so full of deep calculations and everything, and that is why in the game maybe Aravindh wants to avoid these kinds of complex lines, and he decides to go for the best option, bishop e6, which is more positional. And actually, at this point in the interview, Aravindh actually thought that Anish Giri will go for a more aggressive way, because Anish actually have already draw 5 games in a row, and maybe in this situation Anish is in a must-win situation to get his rankings up. So, and actually indeed in this game Anish is playing pretty aggressive after a few moves, as you can see. So first of all, he decides to go back with knight f3, very logical, and here we have knight e4 on the board. Well, maybe not the best move here, but knight h5 is slightly better to kick this bishop, and let's say bishop h2 back. Then black's idea is actually to go g6, and then the knight can reroute back to g7 and at some point to f5. And yeah, that is one of black's main ideas here in these kinds of openings. And in the game, however, black decides to play knight e4, which is not a big mistake, but there's bishop d3, simply allowing white to gain a tempo by attacking this knight. And here, f5 was played in the game, but it does create a weakness on e5, which is really nice outpost for white's knight if black won't be able to defend it with the knight. And then again, we have bishop h2 back. So bishop h2 is actually a very necessary move because black might be coming up with some g5 ideas. So it's very necessary to, be aware of it and retreat first back to a safe square. In the game, we have short castle, and here short castle was also played in the game. King h8, so getting the king to safety, and knight e2 was played. So you see that Anish is actually now trying to maneuver his knight to f4 at some point to attack this bishop, or maybe knight g3. So he has a lot of ideas in his mind. And in the game, Aravindh is also coming up with some ideas, first by going for this really nice move, a5. So as you can see, even though black, as you can see, is basically moving the pieces in the center of the board more towards the king side, but then suddenly he came up with a move that is completely on the opposite side, on the queen side, on the very sided file. And the idea is actually very simple, because if you don't have any counterplay on the king side, then you can actually switch sides to the queen side and just create more space and more counterplay. And that is black's idea here, to gain advantage on both sides, or gain counterplay on both sides, that is. So here a5 was played, very logical, and in the game we have knight e5, the knight finally jumps into this really nice square. So of course black takes it, and then after bishop takes e5, at least the bishop is not as strong as the knight on e5. And here in the game, black decides to play bishop f6 to offer a trade of bishops. So Aravindh is actually playing extremely accurate. All of these couple of moves, a5, bishop f6, are all really nice moves by him. In the game, we have f3. So basically, Anish says, okay, my knight went to e5, but then you traded it off. So now I'm going to kick your knight on e4 away so that it won't be as good as it is. And here, black decides to get this knight back to d6, and g4 was played. So Anish is suddenly getting really aggressive, and I can understand why, because he has already drawn 5 games in a row, and he is in a desperate winning, like in a must-win situation, because if he keeps on drawing, then there's there'll be less possibility for him to get a really high rank. So g4 is played in the game, but this is not the best reply here. It's too aggressive. Maybe for white should just first of all get the rook to the e file, like rook a e1, to get all of the pieces to where they should be, and then slowly pushing the pawns, like slowly processing the idea. But in the game, Anish is just trying to, he's in a hurry, too fast. Everything is happening too fast, and he played g4 immediately. But now the idea is that, of course, for black, you should not take on g4, because then after h takes g4, this h7 pawn will become a big, big weakness. And if you play h6 here, then after king g2, white will be able to swing all of the major pieces, as well as all of these minor pieces, towards the king side, and black's king is in a really bad situation. But in the game, Aravindh definitely knows that he cannot take, and he played this best move, which is queen e7. And here we have knight g3 being played, so putting more pressure on this f5 pawn, but Aravindh simply defended calmly with g6. And here in the game, Anish actually made his first mistake. He played rook a u1. This is a move that seems really logical, but is like a mistake, a positional mistake, that is. And here, suddenly you should know that black has already played g6, and all of this dark square diagonals are all open. These dark squares are a little bit weak. And for white should actually play this bishop f4 move to keep the bishop pair on the board. And since this e6 bishop is just such a bad bishop because it is being blocked by its own pawn chains and everything, it's simply like a pawn. There's no much other uses for this bishop. So it's best for white here to save as much pieces as possible and go for more complex play. Maybe even going for e4 ideas. Let's say black keeps on maneuvering the pieces with knight f7. But now here, let's say for white, you can actually go knight e2 if you want to first of all create a free diagonal for the bishop to retreat to. But also in the future, you might want to, play some other moves like knight c3 or something, get the queen over there, and then push e4. I mean, the position is just full of maneuverings, coordinations, and everything, but in the game, Anish here decides to play rook a e1. And this is not a good move due to the fact that black can here play bishop takes e5, and after d takes e5, knight f7. And suddenly this e5 pawn is in huge, huge trouble. And even though this e6 bishop still looks extremely passive, but at least right now black can play some d4 moves, and to free this bishop, to activate this bishop, it's no longer that bad for black. And here in the game, Anish decides to play f4, so defending the pawn, very logical. And here we have queen h4. And queen h4 is a move that is really logical because you're attacking the knight, attacking the h3 pawn, as well as putting pressure on the g4 pawn. So it's a move that can attack a lot of things, basically. But here in the game, the best move is actually to go queen h2 here to defend the pawn and the knight, and basically don't need to worry about taking on g4, because then after you take, black cannot take back on the pawn because then there's king g2. White sacrifices a pawn but opens up the king side files and can start launching a very deadly attack on the king side. So that is basically white's idea, but however in the game, Anish decides to play this king g2 move. Now actually, if black had just played any kind of normal moves here, like rook a d8 or rook a e8, these kinds of logical moves, then probably the position will turn directly into an equalized position. But however, there is this one brilliant reply here for black. This one move can actually increase black's advantage towards a new high level. And this move is just such a brilliant idea. I think anyone who is playing this move won't come to your mind at first sight. But it just came to Aravind's mind and he played knight g5. This is just a brilliant move because, first of all, the idea is to attack the h3 pawn, right? And if white takes on g5, but this just simply falls for black's trick with f takes g4. And obviously, if you take, there's bishop g4 here, queen h3 is coming, the king is in huge trouble. And if you go for something like rook h1 to prevent that, but there's simply bishop f3 to win the game on the spot. And if you play something else like, I don't know, rook f6 here is the best move, but then black takes and white is pretty much in a really bad shape, like queen h2, king f1, like takes. The calculation is really concrete, but after a couple of exchanges and everything, black is up 2 pawns, even though white's passed pawn might seem a little bit scary, but white's king is in a really bad shape and black is already winning. This is just a brilliant move, and in the game, Anish didn't have the courage to take, and he instead played rook h1, which is a better reply here. But then the follow-up is another brilliant move, and this, actually, I think this is just a move that is even harder than knight g5. And this move is d4. Well, of course, Aravindh played this move immediately, really fast, without much thinking. But I guess this is just his follow-up plan of knight g5. He definitely knows that after knight g5, white's best reply is to go rook h1, and then I'll have this d4 move, threatening to go bishop d5 here. And in the game, Anish found, well, the best reply, which is to go f takes g5. And here in the game, we have d takes e3. Now, still threatening to go bishop d5, but at the same time also pushing the pawns forward, which is kind of unstoppable here. Now, the best reply here is actually just to take on e3, because there's not much that white can do here, and after f4, we have rook f3. Here, don't even think about going bishop d5 here, because there's knight e4 to block, and white is suddenly winning with a piece up. But here, you can actually just take the knight, and then after rook takes g3, go queen takes g5. The material is even, but white's king is just a really bad king, and everything is falling apart. The rooks are going to be coming out, and bishop d5. All kinds of threats are coming, and it is unstoppable. So here in the game, however, Anish was just under too much pressure, and he played a blunder, and he played g takes f5. Now, this is just a blunder because black simply takes back, and after rook takes e3, f4 was played. So all of these moves are well played by Aravindh. He did not make one single mistake or inaccuracy. We have rook f3 here, but then there's f takes g3, another only move. We have bishop e4 now, but here simply takes on f3, bishop f3, rook f8, queen e4, rook f4, attacking the queen goes to d3, and now another brilliant move by Aravindh, and he played this rook takes f3. Now, obviously, if you take on f3, there's bishop d5 to win the queen, so the only option is to, either go check or take back with the king, but then still there's bishop d5, and if you go for somewhere else, don't even think about taking on h1 though, because there might be some, checks here, and it could lead to a draw. But here you just simply play something like after king e2, just play bishop c4 to win the queen, and it's game over basically. So that's why in the game, white's only chance is to ignore everything and play queen d8 check, which happened in the game. But here after king g7, pretty much forced, king takes f3 finally takes, because if you play queen e7, then here black will be just able to get the rook back, and after here then queen comes to check, and it is pretty much close to mate, so white can only take back. But then there's bishop d5 check, the best move, king e3, queen e4 check, and then here after queen f4 check, because here if you take on h1, then queen f6 again will be a draw, because black cannot run away from all of these checks. But here, after a couple of accurate checks by black, queen f4, king c2, queen f5, king d2, bishop takes h1, and now we just realize that we take the rook with the bishop, and then there's no longer enough checks for white, because you just simply block with the queen, and it is game over. What a beautiful win by Aravindh. He won this game. He is now 5 out of 7. Well, this is round 7, and he drew round 8, and he is now 5.5 out of 8 in the lead. He is in a half-point lead, and the last round will be happening tonight because I'm recording this video. Right now, I'm probably, after I release this video, round 9 might have already finished. I hope that he can win the tournament, of course. This is such a beautiful game by him, and all of these really brilliant ideas, knight g5, d4, rook f3. And he just didn't make a single mistake in this whole game. He had an accuracy of 97. And Anish, he is also a really strong grandmaster, right? But in this game, Aravindh just somehow outplayed him by setting all of these amazing ideas and everything, and immediately won this critical game. This is the game of the tournament, and yeah. So hope you guys enjoyed this game and also this video. Hope you guys learned something from this game, and thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!